The world and distractions are constantly getting louder around us. What if the gospel rose above all of that? Join us as we challenge ourselves to know God more and to make the gospel louder in our own lives and in the community around us. May the gospel get louder.
Morning, everybody. Joe here. We just haven't seen you guys in a long time. We were counting on the calendar now. It's about 2 months, 63 days, as a matter of fact. We're still here, still praying for you guys, and still loving you guys. Stephen wanted me to talk to you guys this morning and about things that have been on my mind about being kind of isolated and being alone. The biggest thing that has affected me and my wife Vicki is about how you look at things, the perspective of how you see things and how God sees things through you. When we started with you guys, we're pretty old. We're both retired. I'm 65 and she's 67. And you guys probably didn't exactly pick us to be leaders, but we don't see you guys as kids. We see you more as grandkids. And as grandparents or anybody that's got a older person in their life, we look at things different than you guys do. We look at things about we look at things backwards. We see things that we've done, we've experienced, and we've been through that maybe you guys aren't going to see yet. So with that being said, we kind of wanted to give you this little point of view of us that, it all depends on how you see things. Vicki and I were talking about who in the Bible looks at things differently. And the biggest change on how you see things was brought from a servant's point of view from a long time ago in the Old Testament. There's these two guys, these two prophets, and one was Elijah and one was Elisha. So, and this story is about Elisha. And so it comes to a point now that Elisha, he's in this situation that there's this king of the north, of Aram, and he's going to go against Israel. And so Elisha tells the king of Israel, he says, okay, the king of Aram is going to go against you. You should go here, put your army here, so when he comes, you'll be ready for him. And so this happens 2 or 3 times, and the king of Aram, he gets kind of ticked. He says, okay, he calls all of his guys together, his generals, and he says, listen, he says, somebody's ratting me out. I got to know who's doing that. Somebody in my ranks is telling the king of Israel what we're doing. So all of his advisors tell him, well, no, not necessarily. Now, what's going on is that he's got this guy Elijah, he's a prophet of God, and he tells the king of Israel everything that you're doing. He knows what you're talking about in your bedroom. And the king says, I can't have this. I got to have this guy Elisha out of the picture. So he sends his army down to Dothan. Dothan's a city about 50 miles from where they're at. And he's going to attack the city, Dothan, where Elisha's at. So what happens is, at nighttime, the army arrives, and it surrounds the city. And so the servant of Elisha wakes up. He goes up on the wall and he looks out, and what does he see? He sees the whole army of Aram around the city, and so he's scared to death. So he freaks out. He runs and gets Elisha. And Elisha runs up on top of the wall, looks out, and he sees the whole army of Aram around him. And he looks at his servant, he says, don't worry about it. He says, because there's more of us than there are of them. And the guy looks at him like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? And so he says, listen, he says, there's more on our side than there is on their side. And he goes, all right, I've been with you a little while. He says, I'm going to believe this, but I don't see him. And so Elijah looks up and he prays to the Lord. He says, Lord, open his eyes that he can see what I see. And immediately it says that the servant's eyes were opened. So the servant's eyes, all of a sudden he looks out over the fields, and what does he see? He sees angels and flaming chariots of unknown amounts above and around Aram's army. So all of a sudden, he's got a different perspective. He sees things differently. He sees things from God's point of view. Changes the whole outcome of the what was going to be a battle. So as it moves on, Elijah says, God, he says, strike these men, the bad guys, with blindness. So he does. And so then the servant says, well, what am I supposed to do now? What are we supposed to do now? Go down and kill him? He says, no, let's not do that. He says, let's lead him up to Samaria. So they take him from Dothan, which is a little bit south of Samaria, up to Samaria, which is a region. Anyway, so they're on their way. So they get to Samaria, and he says, okay, Lord, he says, open their eyes. They open their eyes, and they don't know where they're at. They don't know what's been going on. All they know, they've been walking for a while. And so he says, should we kill him? No, let's not kill him. Let's give him something to eat. So they gave him bread and water. Then they nourished him. And they said, the Lord, our God of Israel, has given you guys into our hands, and we have chosen not to kill you. We're going to send you back. So they send them back, and the king of Aram gets the message that they're back without Elisha, and what exactly happened, that the Lord delivered Israel out of his hand. So the king of Aram then just backs off, and they have peace with him. So seeing it from God's point of view changed everything. So what we are now in with this, all this pandemic, and have to stay at home and not go anywhere, we want to see God working in your lives. Now, to do that, we first must pray that we see God working in our lives. Every morning we get up, my wife and I, we get up and we ask God, what can we do for you today? What can you do, or what will you do to make us a blessing to somebody else? And I don't think there's been a day gone by that we haven't contacted or we haven't seen somebody that needed something that we could provide for them. So through all this 60 days, we've been pretty busy helping other people. So along with that, there's people at church that need help, and there's people in our families that need help, and there's just people everywhere, because we live on a busy street and there's lots of construction out in front, and so we're out there talking to those guys, and those guys are needing a few things that we can provide for them also. So what can you guys do as being 12, 14 years old? What can you do? What can you see God doing in your lives every day? We're always telling you guys that Christ loved you so much that he died for you, and he did. And he does love you that much. But how do you feel that? How do you actually experience that love? One of the biggest ways that you guys at your age can see the Lord working in your life is simply by looking at your mom and dad, or your guardians, or whoever is providing you with what you need. First of all, a family, love, someplace to stay, food, something to do, all the stuff that you've got. Your mom and dad are doing that for you. That's the love that God has given your parents for you. And the ultimate love is, of course, that somebody would die for you. And believe it or not, your parents would die for you. So just look at your mom and dad in a new way. See what they're doing for you. Just look at your whole family in a different way, a thankful way. Thankful that you have a family. Thankful that you are being provided for. Believe me, I can remember back when we were growing up, and my brothers and sisters, and we didn't necessarily were very thankful for what my mom and dad gave us. But look at it just a little bit different.